Not
God,
too
it's
late. Hey guys, and well, we're here. We're a couple seconds late, but nothing too horrible. Tonight, we are talking with the author of The Beast's Heart, and she is
Woo.
all the way on the other side of the world in Australia. That's
Hi.
awesome. That's awesome. Let me turn this
Thank you for
down.
having me.
You're welcome. I am so in love with this book. Oh my god, like seriously,
Oh,
so in
thank
love
you.
with this. This was so good. Uh,
I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
Guys, you know the drill. If you have a question, you can toss it into the live chat below. For some reason, YouTube is not permitting you to do that. You can toss it over to social media. Just tag me and I will find it. So, of course, oh my goodness. Like this is all I've been reading for the past 2 days. And then I had like a massive migraine hit.
Oh,
So
no.
I actually haven't finished yet. I've got like
Okay.
20
Okay.
pages to go. 20
Okay.
pages.
No spoilers.
But it's so good. It's so good. And I am just so in love with these covers. I've seen the cover that you posted. I'm guessing that's the
Yes.
UK cover, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like very, very few and far between do I love two covers to a book. But
I know.
I love both
Yeah.
covers.
I have been very, very blessed by the cover gods. Oh, can you see me properly?
Yeah, I can see you. You're fine.
Okay. Oh, good. 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 I've been very blessed by the cover gods. So the UK cover, the UK edition came out first, and it is so close to the image I had in my head that I sort of when you write a book, you obviously you imagine in your dreams what the cover will look like. The reality is authors often get very little say
Right.
in what their cover looks like. So it was a very nerve-wracking wait. They sent me they sent me a sort of a document that had a couple of passages in the book that they'd given to the cover designer to look at, and they sent me some sort of thumbnails of other covers that they thought that sort of style would work, and that all looked really great, but I was still really nervous. And then they sent me the actual cover art, and I have to say I cried. I was so happy because it was so beautiful. And then when it was picked up in the US, I was really worried because I had such a beautiful cover in the UK. I was, how will the US cover ever live up to it? And then Berkeley produced that beautiful, um, with the roses and the castle. It just looks like a tapestry. So
It does. It does. It
yeah.
reminds me of a tapestry. It does. It's so pretty. And that like this book is so good. I love retellings, and Beauty and the Beast is like one of my favorite stories. I actually got really scared because I don't remember like the actual tale to Beauty and the Beast. So I was
Yep.
like, okay, I am gonna do something that I don't normally do. I'm gonna look in the back and see what happens at the end because I was so scared. I'm like, because most of the fairy tales and stuff, they don't end well. They
A lot of
end
them,
very badly.
yeah,
They end
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah,
badly. And I was like, I'm so in love with this book, and I love that it's all from the Beast's point of view.
yeah,
That was just fabulous because you don't normally get that. And
yeah.
and I'm just like, I have to know that everything turns out okay. So as spoilers go, that will be the only one that I talk about.
Okay, okay, all right. Well,
We're
it's a fairy tale
okay.
retelling, so it's yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I was really surprised when I usually look up interview questions and stuff that the author has done. So I try not to duplicate like a whole bunch of them and stuff. I didn't know this is your debut.
Yeah, this is my first novel.
That is crazy. You can't tell. You can't tell at
Ah,
all.
thank
Like
you.
this is just so perfect, and it's like it's not really slow. It has like great pacing, but it's not super fast. And
Yeah,
it just kind of
it's
reminded me of like old books, because it's just like the story slowly unfolding and you falling in love with the characters and everything that's going on.
yeah,
And it's kind of like two stories in one because you got the Beast and his story with Isabeau, and then you've got him looking in on her family.
yes,
So it's kind of
yes.
like, two parts to one story, and it without it being like multiple points of view, and it worked out so well.
Ah,
I love it
thank you,
so much.
thank you. It's I love. I mean, I love those sort of early 19th century, Jane Austen and uh, the Brontes and those sort of 19th century novels. So I guess um, I'm like I sort of wanted to try and give it that kind of feel when I was writing it. So and it's absolutely it's a real slow burn romance. So there is absolutely that element to it. Yeah, and the sisters, I guess. Beauty and the Beast is sort of such an it comes with a bunch of really interesting sort of story problems, and one of them is that essentially you have these two people stuck in a house in the middle of nowhere, on their own for like
And they
a
don't
year,
have Netflix.
and they don't have Netflix, and I've kind of been joking recently. It's like the ultimate, coronavirus pandemic
Right.
read because it's kind of social isolation next level. But um, and and I think if I had just left it up to um my beast and my beauty Isabeau, then it the story probably would have dragged. I probably would have had to shorten it a bit. But in the original fairy tale, there or one of the original versions of the fairy tale. There's a room in the Beast's castle that has it's sort of Beauty's version of Netflix. She's got all these she's got these. I think there might be several magic mirrors in the room, and one of them she can see like plays being performed and
Oh,
music
that's
being performed,
cool.
and there is a scene in the original tale where the Beast does show her when she starts to worry about her family. He in some versions it's a mirror, in some versions he kind of pours a sort of a magical liquid onto a table and she can look through the liquid and see her family. But there's this idea that she's sort of offered a kind of a portal to look over her family and see that they're okay. So I kind of ran with that idea to
Hmm.
um
I
to
think in one
to
of the really old movies that I saw, he like gives her a ring that can transport her back and forth between her family and his castle.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. I think again I think he says I like the idea of her having a ring. That I mean there's a lot of sort of there's a when you love someone, give them a ring. And so that's where that came from. But I think I've read a couple of versions of the story where I mean a ring is it's a nice kind of little magical talisman in
Right.
someone. So yeah. Yep.
Well, it worked because it's like it has that old-timey feel, like Jane Austen and everything else, but
Yep.
then it doesn't have, like the exact wording for those kind of things. So it
Yep.
still feels modern without it,
Yeah. A bit more
being,
accessible. Yeah.
yeah, a lot
Yeah.
a lot easier to read.
Oh, good. I'm so glad
Oh
you
goodness.
enjoyed it.
It was so good. All right. So tell us about your journey to becoming an author.
So that's so I sort of say that's a bit of a fairy tale in itself. I have been very lucky. Um, as you said, so this is my first novel, and it uh, basically what happened was there's my first publisher, Hodder and Stoughton in the UK. They ran an open submissions window back in 2015, and that's usually to have a novel published, you need to find an agent, and your agent submits your manuscript to publishers that they think will be interested, and it's this huge process. And I had actually been looking for an agent, doing all of that stuff, but then Potter and Stout ran this open submissions window, and I put my manuscript in through that, and that's how it was picked up.
Oh
They
wow.
it took a year, so I submitted it in August of 2015, and in um, November of 2016 they made me an offer on the manuscript. So, and then it was published, and then from then, it was published in the UK and Australia in uh, May 2018, and then came out in the US in February of 2019. So it's quite a long sort of process to get published, but you know, it was I have been really lucky with my publishers. They've both been fantastic. So
That's awesome. And I do want to tell everybody that, you know, although this is from Berkeley, I would say it's more geared toward like a YA audience versus an adult audience.
Yeah. I
It
think
doesn't
it
really
was
feel
published as
adult.
YA. Yeah, it was published as YA in the UK, and
Oh, it was okay.
yeah. So so and it's, you know, there's I guess it kind of touches on some darker themes in a couple of places, but there's no really kind of, you know, explicit adult content.
Right. Yeah. I haven't seen anything that's like completely like over the top, like, oh my God, my teenager can't read this.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I would give it to people have asked me sort of how old, and I've said, look, probably, you know, maybe 13 or 14.
Mm-hmm.
Is you know, if you have, especially if you have a precocious reader in your house, then
My 9-year-old is starting to slowly get into YA books. She's reading, was it Crazy Horse from James Patterson? I'm like, you do realize that's YA? And she's like, why I like it.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. It's kind of, yeah. It's been having some conversations with writer friends lately about I don't know if you know, if your readers have heard of the World SF Con is running at the moment. It was supposed to be running in New Zealand this year, and so as an Australian, you know, we were all of us were all set to go over there and have this amazing time at Worldcon, and of course, stupid COVID-19
Everything.
happened. So it's all happening online. For New Zealand, I know, right? So we're all geared to be hanging out together and meeting people we only see every couple of years. And,
right.
So it's been a bit sad to have to do that all online. But been having some really interesting conversations with writer friends about, you know, what is YA, and how is it different from adult fiction or you know, middle grade fiction?
Right.
Yeah. So that's
for the most part, it's basically what I've heard is basically just the age of the characters. That if they're, you know, like 14, you know, high school age to, you know, 19, that's like YA. And then from like 19 to 25 would be new adult. And then everything else above that, you know, going into like your 30s is adult.
I think that's a really good starting point. And I think for me, it's sort of I think it comes down to the perspective in terms of sort of the young adults often have this very strong perspective of sort of discovery or that particular point in your life where you start moving from being a child where you don't necessarily have a lot of sort of agency in how you do things and what goes on in the world, and that young adult genre is where a young person really starts to kind of pick up that agency and start figuring out, you know, how they want to do things differently to their parents, or whether they're, you know, forced to, or whether they choose to, or, you know, it's that start of that journey as somebody who's starting to think about how they want to be in the world.
I think a lot of those, I would say that is like completely 100% true for things like contemporary YA and stuff. But then you've got like the fantasies that, like, you know, these people don't have parents, you know, they've been on their own for years, and you know, they're basically on their own, you know.
Yep.
Then like all bets are off, and they just happen to be, you know, within that age range, you know. But I oh goodness, like it's been going around the bookish community for like years that like books should have ratings. And
okay.
And it's like everything else has ratings.
Yeah.
movies, music, why not books? Because I mean, especially things for like trigger warnings and stuff, it would be great if that was already, mentioned
Yeah.
on the back of the book. So you know what
Yeah.
you're getting into. It would be kind of nice.
That's that's interesting because there's certainly been a conversation that's been happening more and more about I don't know how much you or your readers read fan fiction,
Hmm.
but the big sort of fan fiction site AO3 has these tags that you can use to work out if a piece of fan fiction is something that you want to read,
Okay.
and some of those tags are really kind of like they're about the tropes. So is a story like a friends to lovers,
Hmm.
or an enemies to lovers, or is it
Right. You have a little
that
triangle,
that sort of thing, exactly.
right?
But one thing the site does really well is you can also, or if the piece of fiction does have you know um, darker themes or sort of that more mature content in, you can tag for that stuff as well. And there's been a really interesting movement that publishers like Tor.com, for example, have been doing, where they will put out with their promotion that they do of their books, they'll put out some of the AO3 tags
Hmm.
um, that might apply to the book. So and it is for people who do have concerns about certain content that is triggering. It's a really useful way of flagging, you know, whether something might be a story that they might want to leave aside, or they might just
Right.
want to choose when they engage with that, because
Yeah.
there's some stuff in there
'Cause
that
it's
they might
hard
find.
because like I'm not one. I don't read book flaps or the backs of the books to see what books are about.
Right. Okay. You
So,
just launch in.
yeah, I've got too much stuff to read. I don't have time for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of
Yeah.
them give a lot of stuff away that
Yeah.
I know one that was out like forever ago, it was about ghosts, and you don't find out about that until like about 50, 60 pages in, but that flap
Right.
tells you like everything.
Right.
I'm like, whoa, boo. Just spoil the whole book for me. So I stopped reading them, and
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was one that I read a while back ago called "Girl Made of Stars," and that one deals with her boyfriend being accused of rape. And it's like
Wow.
from the cover and stuff, you would never know. It just looked like full on
Yeah.
white, a little fluffy white contemporary, and it is
Yep.
so not. So it's
Right.
like it would be kind
Yeah.
of just nice to have those because then you know what you're going into. You're
Yeah.
prepared.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just slap you in the face.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. 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 Exactly. And I mean, as a parent too, um I don't necessarily censor what I give my kids to read. My daughter's
Right.
she's just turned 18, so she's quite a bit old now, but and she's quite a big reader, and I don't necessarily sort of censor what I have allowed her and her brother to read, but sometimes you kind of want to think about that as a parent, and
Right.
maybe be prepared to have some
It's
hard
like
conversations.
back when Twilight and stuff came out, and you see like kids at the mall on the TV, and they've got like their
Yeah,
copy of Breaking Dawn, and
yeah,
they're like
yeah,
maybe 10 or 12, and it's like,
yeah,
do these
yeah.
parents know what happens in that?
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And I mean, I can remember when I was in, you know, um, I don't know. Oh, sorry, I'm going to get the grades, the school grade going to be all different between Australia and this. But like when I was, sort of 12 and 13, there were those books that were circulating at school that had the dog-eared corners on certain
Right.
pages, and that's a whole part of growing up. That's fun.
Oh
But
yeah.
then as a parent, you kind of think, okay, but I need to be prepared to have some conversations about
Right.
some of this stuff with my kid,
So
and
crazy.
and also maybe think about, there's there to a certain extent you kind of can't help what you can't control everything your kids are going to be exposed to, but then you think,
No.
okay, well, I want to give them some really positive, constructive, useful sort of um, things to model. I want
Right.
I want them to have. I don't just want them to have kind of like trash things in their head.
Right.
I want them to know about, good positive experiences as well. So
I think the biggest thing is like, as long as you're open to speaking with your kids about, harder topics and stuff, especially in today's age, if you're not open to speaking with your children, in 2020, you have
yeah, they'll Google it.
right. Right. I know there's people I've seen on Facebook and she's like, I'm hiding in my room with a bottle of wine. And I'm just like, why? She's like, I just talked to my 11-year-old about her period and sex. And I'm like, did you say she was 11? You're too late. And I ended up being right. Her daughter had already
Yeah,
had her period for
yeah,
like almost a year. I'm like,
yeah,
you're a little too late on that one. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
no.
yeah. The information's out there. It's just, I mean, yeah,
You
yes,
have failed. You're way too late.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
So of all of the retellings that you could have chosen, why Beauty and the Beast?
Oh, it's such a good question. I I'm I think Beauty and the Beast has probably been my favorite fairy tale for a long time. Mostly because I just love the idea of these two people who kind of actually get a chance to know each other and fall in love because of that. So a lot of there's a lot of fairy tales where um, there's more of a sense of kind of the love at first sight thing, which
Right.
um, can be fun, but I think I like the idea of something kind of deeper sort of emerging between these two people who they really do find this person um, that is their soulmate. And so I really loved that aspect of it. But as I said, I think Beauty and the Beast sort of comes with a bunch of really interesting sort of story problems that have also fascinated me for a long time. So like, and one of them, which it's kind of hilarious looking back now, but one of the story problems with Beauty and the Beast is, you have as your sort of big romantic hero of the story, you've got the Beast, but he's someone who has done something at some point in his life. He's done something so awful that some fairy has come along and decided he needs to be kind of locked up in isolation for 100 years
Right.
or whatever it is. And I always sort of thought, well, how do you come back from that? Like, how do you go from being that awful that someone went, no, you need to just go away, to being the romantic hero of the story? And I have to admit, when the first the first draft of this book that I gave my writers group to read through, I hadn't worked out the answer to that question. So I gave them this draft and they all read it and they were like, yeah, look, that was good, but what did he do? Like, why is he there? We don't know why he's there. I was like, well, I don't know why he's there either. So
It just is.
we,
It just popped up like a
it just
baby.
is. It's just the story. Just run with it. But which is really interesting because it's like, at this point, looking at the book now, like the reason why he's there is such an integral part of the story. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you probably don't kind of find out a full reason to write at the end. So I'm not going to talk about that because you've still got your 20 pages to go. but but that was one of the story problems that I really struggled with. Like I said, I wrote this entire draft before I actually worked out, how that works. So
There's just
it's just got it, it's just got some really and the other thing I find fascinating about Beauty and the Beast, and so this is and it's one of the oldest parts of the story. Fairy tales, I love fairy tales because they're so magical and whimsical, but then when you start kind of pulling them apart, you discover like some bits of the story are thousands of years old. And Beauty and the Beast, there's elements to it that are in the Old Testament. So they're really old stories. And this idea of the the father sort of having an encounter where he's so that the story, I can't, I know it, but it's gone out of my head. But I can't remember exactly the story. But in the Bible story goes, there's this guy, and he is traveling, and he's away from home, and he has an encounter with God, who tells him that when he returns home, he has to sacrifice the first creature that comes to meet him on his return home to God. And this is Old Testament God, so pretty tough love. And he thinks it's going to be his dog or an animal that he expects it to be his dog, and he is okay with that. But when he gets home, it's his youngest daughter who comes out to greet him, and so then there's this whole story about her and how she kind of then readies herself to sort of go up the mountain and be this. And I don't know. I know that she dies, but she sort of goes up the mountain and sort of becomes anyway. It's a bit hazy in my head now. But anyway, that part of Beauty and the Beast, like that's in the Old Testament, and so it's. But then you sort of think about this idea of a father being told, "I will kill you unless you give up your daughter to me."
Right.
Like, what father in this day and age is going to go, "Yeah, I'll take the sure." So there's this really there's this really interesting sort of thing then that happens between her and her father, where he has absolutely no intention of sacrificing her life, and she has absolutely no intention of letting him sacrifice his life for her. So yeah, again, sort of really really interesting sort of tension and story problems to kind of dig into.
I love the story of Beauty and the Beast so much, just for the fact like it's Belle falls in love, Isabel, they fall in love with the Beast, with him looking like this, without him looking human, even though he has human qualities. And in some of the renditions of Beauty and the Beast, I mean, he's out like slaughtering animals and flopping their carcasses on the table and covered in blood and all this stuff, and she looks past all that. So it's like kind of like beauty in the eye of the beholder and all that jazz. And it's this one's so good though. So will we get any more retellings from you?
Yeah. So I write really slowly, so I'll apologize about it. But I am working on this one's probably not so much a retelling as a reimagining of Cinderella.
Ooh.
So that's what I'm working on at the moment. And so in this story, my Cinderella has faked her father's death to try and help get him out of his marriage to her horrible stepmother. So
he's in WITSEC.
Yeah. So she's faked his death, and then of course once he's sort of out of the picture, things start to unravel, and she sort of gets all caught up in sort of political intrigue and plots against the throne, and so that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then I'm also working on another sort of series that's probably a little bit more aware of, but this is a series of books that will be set in 18th century London. So I don't know if you or any of your readers are fans of Georgette Heyer, who kind of invented the whole sort of Regency romance sort of genre back in like the 1940s. Anyway, it's basically 18th century London, but with like angels and demons, and magic, and murder mysteries.
Nice.
Yeah. So
now we're talking. it's up my alley. My online book club, we're actually going to be diving into the Shadowhunter series, and
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
do, like, 2 books a month. We're going to read like all of them. I'm like,
Right.
it's going to take a while.
There's quite a few of those now.
There's a lot of those, and
Yeah.
as you go through the series, they get thicker. So
Yes.
like towards the end,
Yes.
they're like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes. They've just come out, like in the last sort of, I don't know, 12 months or so, they've started putting out the special editions with the beautiful illustration.
oh right, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they're very lovely. A friend of mine has been involved in illustrating those. So
Oh
um,
wow.
yeah, an
Oh, that's
Australian
so
artist
cool.
by the name of Kathleen Jennings. She's done some of the illustration.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
I've got so many
yeah,
different copies of those things.
yeah.
Because
Yes.
I've got the paperback UK copies that are all like just one color, and they
Yep.
have like embossed stuff on the front of them. They're
Yep.
so pretty.
Yeah. Oh, they make such beautiful books these days. It's
They
like
do.
you get these special editions with the sprayed edges and the
Right? Hey,
embossed
like
covers.
those sprayed edges are like gold within the book community.
I know, I know. It's
Yeah.
like it's on every almost like
Oh,
you've
so
got your
weird.
author bingo card and like
Oh,
edition with sprayed edges. It's one of the squares that you come
it's
across of.
so weird because I work at a used bookstore and we have older books that are from like the 40s and stuff, and they all have colored pages in them. So it's like
Yes.
at one point it was a thing that was
Yep.
like
Yep.
done, and now it's
Yes.
just like, oh well, no, this is like a
It's a mass
extra
market. Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Like,
Have you seen those? Have you seen those sort of antique books? I've sort of only seen pictures of them on the internet where they have like a picture painted on the pages, so that
oh right.
when you
So
like,
when you like move it down or
yeah,
something, it creates a
yeah,
scene. Those are so cool
yeah,
looking. Those are
yeah,
so cool.
yeah, very cool.
See. So of course, how bad has the COVID been in Australia?
Look, on the whole, I think we've been really lucky. And my hometown, so I live in Canberra, which is the capital city of Australia, but it's actually quite a small city. It's only maybe about 400,000 people, and we've been really lucky. Um, I think we've only had about 100 cases here.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so not many at all.
Yeah.
But so Australia's been very lucky. But we've sort of there's part of Australia sort of down in the south. They've had a real kind of second wave come through, so that's been getting quite bad. So we had restrictions come in sort of quite early, that I think meant that it didn't get as bad here as we've seen it get
Right.
in a lot of places around the world,
Like Florida.
and which was great, but of course which was meant I'm supposed to be in New Zealand this week, and that didn't happen. But that's okay because we're trying to stop people dying, so wear
Yes.
a mask, everyone.
Yeah.
Uh, but then they sort of started lifting the restrictions, and now we're sort of seeing a bit of a second wave come through in some places in Australia. So they've sort of halted lifting a lot of restrictions in some places as restrictions come back. So hopefully we're still kind of right in the middle of that sort of rising peak, though. So hopefully in the next sort of week or so we'll
like
start to
goes
see
away
it
and doesn't
come
come
back
back.
down again.
So what have you been reading lately? Have you been reading anything?
Yeah. So I I'm just in the middle of How You Win the Time War by Max Gladstone and Amal Almokhtar. I think that's how you pronounce her name. So that's one of the novellas that's up for a Hugo Award this year. So and a friend of mine lent me a copy. So the Hugo Awards are actually happening like in 24 hours. So it's a little bit late for me to read it and vote on this one, but I'm really enjoying it. And just recently, I also I've been reading. I've got here. Hang on.
When in doubt, look at the shelves.
So these ones, so Perfect Assassin by
Ooh.
there we go, Theodore. That's this. It's this sort of like, you know, assassins and murder, set in a kind of a fictional city in the middle of a desert. So that the third one in that trilogy has just come out, and I just have read the other two and been really enjoying them. So yeah,
Nice.
lots of murder and mystery and shenanigans and running over rooftops and you know, poisoning people in the dark. So I love it. The first book is basically an assassin gets tasked with solving a murder, and it's like
That's
such a good concept.
Yeah,
That's
such
great.
an interesting pairing.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. So
usually
really,
the one's causing it, not trying to solve it.
exactly. It's
That's
yeah.
cool.
So nice premise there, and so they've been really fun. So and the third one has just come out. So I've
Cool.
got that on my to read list.
So is it cold where you are, or not so much?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is?
Yes.
Shit,
Yeah.
it's
So
cold here.
yeah, it's middle of winter here, and Canberra has a bit of a reputation for being a bit of a cold city. So it's very
Oh wow.
it's a very foggy morning this morning. So
Oh, that's right, because it's tomorrow. It's tomorrow morning there, right?
yeah,
It's
yes.
like
So
hello from the past.
yes, first of August where I am right now, and it's about, I don't know, probably about like 8:30 morning. So
Oh wow.
yeah,
Yeah, because it's
yes,
like 6:30 here at night. Time to
yeah,
eat
yeah,
dinner.
yeah, yeah.
It's hot here in Florida, though. It was like the heat index was like 100 degrees here today.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yes.
Crazy.
Yes. Yeah. Is it? Do you guys get like a lot of humidity there, or is it a dry heat?
Uh, I don't know. I can never tell. I can never tell because like I'm from Ohio originally. I'm like, oh, okay, well that's a dry heat. Florida's a moist
Right.
heat. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
how do you tell the difference? Because I'm like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I sweat
Yeah.
either way, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like that.
You know, as long as I
Yeah.
can breathe, I think I'll be just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Just get next to that aircon.
Oh yeah, I like live inside with the air conditioning and fans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't go outside unless you have to. Not
Yeah.
safe.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I cannot wait for other books to come out because now, like,
Thank you.
now I have other stuff to look forward to. So, woohoo!
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been lovely chatting to you.
You're welcome. All right,
Yeah.
guys, this was our last author chat of this month. You can join us next month, which is like in a day for these authors. And we will be talking with, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce probably anybody's names because I can't read anything. Coop this knows the scoop. Anna Reese will be doing another author chat with this author on the 6th at 6 p.m. Then we also have Lori Forrest and Nancy Fisher going back on for When Elephants Fly and The Shadow Wand, which I do not know where my copy of it is. Then I will be talking with one of my other favorite authors, Carolyn Links. She is the author of Sanctuary. The third book of the series comes out next month. I cannot wait to read it. I grabbed these, finally found hardbacks of them. And then our last book of the month will be, our next to last book of the month is All of Our Worst Ideas by Vicky Skinner. And then the last book of the month is The Second Mother by Jenny something or other that I can't pronounce, but I don't have a copy of that book as of yet. It is on its way. So you guys, of course, can check out the RSVPs for that here on YouTube under Across the Reviews, or you can go to the site and click the upper right-hand corner where it says Author Chat, and that will take you to all of them. So I hope you guys had a great time. Thank you again for so much for coming on this show, and I'll catch you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.